in healthcare, as he knows, we have to disclose. We make disclosures before we ever give a talk or speak. So here are my disclosures. Melissa is my cousin. Yay. We actually come from sides of the family that don't see each other too often. And she was raised in San Diego, and I was raised here, and then our lives reconnected when I was lucky enough to work with the PAD Project, and it's the most incredible organization. But it was really when I saw her win an Oscar, I was like, cousin Melissa? And then from then on, it was like history has been the best. And Sonali and I met when our kids were at the same grammar school, and Sonali independently knew my partner at work, Vanessa, and She Rose Rise and had been sort of working together with Vanessa. And so there are lots and lots of points of intersection. And this is not an accidental pairing. These are two incredible women. And the theme of this conversation is really on Giving Tuesday is sort of understanding how two women give back in different ways, and then opening it up to ways that we can all give back and that we can motivate the kids in our lives to give back. Because I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of adults is how do they get kids to be givers and doers, right? Knowing that a lot of that drive needs to be intrinsic. So I'm just going to start by asking, and Sonali, maybe I'll start with you, to share a little bit about yourself and about She Rose Rise and just anything you want to say to the group.
First of all, thanks for having me on this panel, especially with two amazing authors. I feel like I'm now being inspired to do something about getting myself a book. But thank you for having me, and the space is beautiful, so congratulations on that. But She Rose Rise really was born in 2020, and it came out of a desire for me looking for things for my own daughters. Because I grew up in a family, I'm from Sri Lanka. I came here when I was 5 years old. And to me, service was a part of our everyday life. It was something that my parents opened doors for people. Everybody that is from college, they literally live at my parents' house. That we always were doing things for other people. And I was looking for things for my own children in 2020, pre-pandemic. And everything that I kept finding was really civic, community, and leadership driven, which are all wonderful. But when I was growing up, one of the things that I lacked was the sound of my voice, because Sri Lankan girls should be quiet and be seen, not necessarily heard. And I didn't know the power of my voice until I went to college. And so when I was looking around, there wasn't really the typical program that was out there that would build a girl up from the inside out. And that's really what I was looking for my own daughters. And it became, let's figure out how we can help more girls. And we really have 12 pillars that range everything from self-esteem to self-respect to self-reliance, learning about finance and money and how to cook a small meal to how do you do self-defense, all the way up to building a life of courage, compassion, love, and gratitude towards self and then towards others. And so our program is educational programming to learn about yourself, but it's also a way to be able to serve, because everything that we do at She Rose Rise is really focused not just on yourself, but once you learn these skills, how can you build that and help others? So for example, if you're learning about the pillar of empathy, it's wonderful to know back around and be able to serve your community with. So for example, we'll have the girls create like a little tile that they can draw about themselves, and then we have them drop it from a high point. And why would you have me do this? And we serve girls 8 through 19. So like, why would you have me do this? We drop it, some of them break, some of them shatter. And we have to pick up all the little pieces and put them back together, because we practice the art of kintsugi, which is a Japanese form of, and putting yourself together, even though you feel shattered, with a little bit of gold, makes you stronger and more vibrant and more beautiful than when you started with. So it's okay. But then we partner with great people like Good Karma LA to provide meals for those girls, not just for afternoon, but also for 4 meals to take home. If you need it for yourself, take it for yourself. If your family needs it because they're hungry, take it to them. If you see someone who's unhoused, provide it to them, because we always want to be reciprocal, and girls also learn by doing. So they get to practice that every single day. And we also provide one-on-one mentorship to them as well.
Okay, hi. So first of all, it's an honor to be here with you and with you two powerhouses, and thank you all for coming up an early morning. And as you were all walking in, I heard you talking about Oedipus, and I heard you mentioning the Odyssey, and this has a point, but I am a high school English teacher, and believe it or not, those texts that I teach, teaching right now, the Odyssey, have fed into how the PAD project came about, which is that our origin texts all are in patriarchies. I am Beowulf, son of Edgeforth, here to slay the dragon, or whatever it is. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes. Meanwhile, Penelope's busy fighting off, 50 suitors, and poor Telemachus has to man up to bring his wife home. All these things happen, and men plunder, and the wives are equated to plunder, and girls in my class started asking around 10 years ago, well, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem so fair. This doesn't seem great. And I'm like, yeah, I feel a little uncomfortable. And believe me, I love those texts. They're beautiful, beautiful texts. At the same time, we need to look at what messages we're giving young women and girls. And I had the opportunity to travel with my girls, with my students, with a wonderful organization called Girls Learn International, which seeks to educate girls to the same degree as boys around the world, where girls, for various reasons, including, we learned, getting their periods, are not educated to the same degree as boys, because around the world, girls lack menstrual health education, they lack clean and safe toilets, places to change, and products. So my students and I were like, we're going to do something about this. We live in LA. We're going to make a documentary. It's a long story, but we made that documentary. It's called Period End of Sentence, and that went on to win the Academy Award and sort of launched our nonprofit, because we got donations, big and small. And I think the sad but eye-opening and ultimately inspirational thing that I learned was that right after the Academy Award, the emails kept pouring in. I had my Oakwood school email. I still have that, but I also have a PAD project email now. But we got so many emails, and many were from right here in Los Angeles saying, I stuff my underwear with socks. How can you help? Please help. And so the PAD project, thanks to people who have come join us like Cara and other experts around the world, we still have a very small staff, but we're now in 14 countries, and we partner in every state in the United States to distribute menstrual products to communities in need. So, yeah.
She's the impressive cousin.
Okay. I'm too positive.
Sonali, you touched on this a little. I'd love for you to go a little deeper. You combine this unique pairing of service to a group of kids and inspiring volunteerism among that group of kids. So they're both giving and receiving. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that model, because I think that model is unique. So can you share how it works?
Well, first of all, it's our responsibility as women, especially on this Giving Tuesday, to reach back and pull up everywhere we go. That's just the pedagogy in which I was raised and believed in. We lift as we climb. And so it's an opportunity for girls, especially that are in our program, to be able to learn something, but be able to give back. And when you teach a young person, especially a girl, we learn by doing. We don't necessarily learn when people are talking at us or to us. We learn through conversation. So when you come to Shiro's Rise, it very much looks like this, where you get to be a part of the conversation. A girl will get to interview a Shiro in her life. She gets that opportunity to be up there and be vulnerable and ask tough questions of a grown adult woman who's sharing her particular story. We talk in circles because that's just how we communicate. We talk to one another. And then they get an opportunity to go practice what they're learning, and they get to go home with a specific tool that they get to have as well. And if they choose to, they also can grow into leadership opportunities. Yes, we have an adult board, but we also have a young Sheroes board that helps us with everyday programming. So some of the girls actually, they all have to go through the program in order for them to be a part of our young Sheroes board, because you get to give us an opportunity to learn from you on how students want to receive the services that we're offering. I can't imagine knowing what it feels like to be in a 13-year-old body in my age at this moment. So I'm not going to assume that these girls want to hear it from me. They want to hear it from their peers. And sometimes when you hear it from your peers, or we have college students who become facilitators that run small group circles, it's a great opportunity for them to be able to learn from each other and from their peers. And sometimes you're more heard in that way. You just need someone to facilitate those conversations. So it gives people an opportunity to serve, but also to be heard. And that's all we want, is to feel seen, heard, and valued in this world. And it allows folks to do that. But we also offer a mentorship component, because it's hard to walk through this life without someone being your personal cheerleader. And so we pair adult women to be with our young girls, and it's an hour commitment per month. So, if someone wants to be able to give on Giving Tuesday but don't have a lot of funds to be able to do that, it's a great way on Giving Tuesday to think about service instead. And what do you have to offer that's an hour a month commitment to be able to help a girl to understand herself? And those conversations are really amazing. The 8-year-olds, you will see they are most confident girls, because a girl's self-esteem peaks at the age of 8, and then it rapidly declines by 64% by the age of 9. And that's a huge, sharp drop. And add social media, the pandemic, and everything else, if you're living in a third world country, how that plummets significantly. And so it's a way and an opportunity for us to learn by doing and learning from each other, because we're storytellers. That's how we learn. We learn from each other.
And not coincidentally, the average age for a girl to enter puberty is between 8 and 9. Yeah. And that is right. Yeah. So I will add a little personal story, which is I was invited along with Dolly Clark, who I think many of you know. She's an amazing family practice doctor here in town who runs an organization called Adolescent. She teaches about puberty to small groups and in schools. She's wonderful. She and I were invited to come speak at Cheers Rise this past summer, and we spent an hour or so in a room with these girls ranging in age. There's a decade time span among them. And I'll tell you 2 incredible things. So the first was how engaged every single one of them was, which it's hard to emphasize how unique this is, but you've got an 18-year-old sitting next to an 8-year-old, and they're both into being there. So Sonali's doing something special. That's number one. Number 2 was watching what the older girls were doing, mentoring the younger girls in the room. And they were doing it by modeling engagement. They were doing it by showing respect to their peers, to us. They were being funny. They were being honest. They were being raw. But they were telling with their actions. They were telling these younger girls, it's okay, I'm going to do it, and then you do it. And so we would ask them questions about their sleep or their this or their that. And it was really the modeling that was happening in the room that was so powerful, because you realize that they didn't have, these older girls, when we asked them afterwards, they said they never had themselves to model, and that all they wanted to do in that room was to show the littles that it was going to be okay, and that there were ways to get help and to reach out to people, to connect with people. It was a really unbelievable experience. And I think there's something very special happening over there. Okay, Melissa, you touched on this as well in your intro, but I want to go deeper. You have local programs, US-based programs, and you have international programs. And when you say small but mighty team, this is an extremely small, lean organization.
Yeah.
To be in 14 countries
Yeah.
and to have services
Yeah.
all across the US,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how do you thread the needle of one common problem, which is managing periods, that manifests in so many different ways around the globe. And knowing that here in the US, there are many kids who do not have to miss school on account of period. There are many who do. And the assumptions that are made around that versus in a developing country where it's the problem is a little bit more out in the open.
Yeah. First, I think, I don't know if I should or can say this, but something sort of writ large when you think about lower income countries and high income countries like the United States, the assumption is, oh, we don't have what's called period poverty here. And period poverty, by the way, is simply the lack of access to products to manage one's period, to reproductive health education, and to clean and safe toilets. That's what period poverty is. And we tend to think, oh, we're the United States. Period poverty isn't here, or it isn't in other high income countries. And patriarchy is very much alive here, which goes into our financial systems, which means that in the United States, women have to pay and girls have to pay much more over a year. So if you are having, if you are needing food, if you are needing to pay rent, this is an extra cost you can't maintain. What I'm getting at is that so-called third world or so-called less developed countries, many have elected women leaders to their countries. And it's just interesting to note that we think in so many ways we've evolved to treating women and girls on par with other citizens, yet we clearly don't feel comfortable electing somebody to the highest office, whereas other countries around the world who are considered lower income, et cetera, have done so. Anyway, just saying. That said, every community is different and looks different, so that in rural India, for example, it might be a matter of access, and periods and menstruation has stigma in almost every culture. So we're working to combat that. Some of that is based on those texts of origins, which are Eastern, Western, all around. And so the PAD project early on, first of all, because we're small, decided that we nonprofits on the ground working in the countries where they work know what's best for their community and what their community's needs are. So if menstrual cups work for them, that's great. If they want to do a pad making machine, which I'm happy to talk about how those operate, we can work on that with you. If it's simply a matter of, and there's things called washable pads, which you sew, if your climate works with that, we work with that. So we do all different kinds of options. In the United States, it's mostly about distribution. So we have a refugee population, we have people in foster care, domestic abuse shelters, homeless shelters, schools all over. California is ahead of the curve when it comes to providing access to menstrual supplies. We just passed AB 367. That's to say that period products should be in all schools in California for free so that students can access them. Now, that's like a law, who's getting it, who's facilitating it, and that's where the PAD project can step in to help. And one other thing I'll say about that, just to show how sad the kind of situation is, so different states have been sooner than others to mandate that free men's. By the way, have you heard about Tampon Tim and that nickname? Okay, so just when Tim Walz was the VP choice, the opposition was trying to find a way to, you know, what can we say about him that would make him so distasteful? Oh, I know, let's make fun of him. Tampon Tim, that must be the worst insult because he supports free tampons in public schools, imagine. So that's where we are with menstrual stigma in our country. But anyway, when schools started putting pads and tampons for free in dispensers, people started bringing them home. So they said, oh no, people are stealing these, so we better not do this. Well, if you step back a second and think, why are people stealing this? They're not making the big bucks off of pads and tampons. They're stealing it because their mom and their sister, and they may be worried they won't have some next month. And it just only shows that the need is here. So the need is everywhere. I kind of went all over the place with that question, but yes. Thank
Well,
you.
and you go all over the place with your organization, so it's perfect. It's
Okay.
great. I have just two more questions before we open it up. The first is, you both work with students. You have figured out how to motivate and activate students. Can you share with everyone here how those of us who are not you could motivate and activate young people?
I would say take them with you, right? To me, service was not something I was told to do. I was shown how to do it. Even with my own daughters, they spend a lot of time volunteering. They don't necessarily know how to set that up at their age, but I take them with me wherever I go, and they volunteer for everything. They set everything up at Shira's. They take it all down. They are a part of all aspects of it. But it's important to open the doors for the young people in our life, especially young women and girls. They need someone to open that door and to kind of show them and do it with them. When we have our program, we not just offer the program to our girls, but we also offer a parallel parent program. And parents are asked to give back to each other as well. And so they're able to bring their daughters with them. They're able to volunteer because they like to travel in packs. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to send my daughter somewhere to learn about something that I don't know anything about. I have to feel comfortable with it. And so it's an opportunity to really, let's take them along with us. Let's encourage them to do something. Let's sign them up for a free program like Shira's Rise. We're accepting applications, by the way, for our spring cohort. It's on our website. And, it's important to show. Girls don't want to be told anymore. They want to be able to be given the opportunity to think critically for themselves and maybe be able to see, is this for me? And they have to do what's right. And I also have a college counseling background. So people always ask me, well, what can I do to prepare my daughter for college? Let her follow what she loves. Let her do what feels naturally organic to her. So that when she is ready to go off to college, she's already doing what feels good inside to her. She's already serving others in her community and doing leadership work already because it's part of who she is and her identity. And those are the best stories to be able to read when you're reading a kid's application, as someone who authentically knows who she is. And it's really hard to do that at the age of 17 or 18 when you've never had any experience with that whatsoever. And then you're asked at the last minute, hey, you got to do this. Don't tell me, involve me, teach me, show me, allow me to have those opportunities.
I think that a little righteous anger about what's happening in the world around them and what they see as injustices. I have students who talk to me all the time. Why are the boys' athletic teams getting more money and more funding? Why does our school, why do our peers show up for the boys' games where they don't show up for the girls' games? And I mean, I'm just thinking of a lot of things in the books that we read. I feel like since we are talking about girls and young women today, I think that young girls get a bad rap. I can't tell you how many times just in my life as a high school teacher, teenage girls, and of course it's true. There are social dramas. There's all of that. At the same time, that's also like a narrative that we keep seeing in movies. And by the way, I love Mean Girls, love it, hilarious. But we see this trope of girls that are fighting each other. And one of the favorite things that I heard from you and from you is all these stories of young girls lifting each other up and supporting each other with a common cause. My favorite, people ask, what's your favorite thing about the PAD project? And it's that now the young women who started with me are 28, 29, and they come in and talk to the freshman students. It's a great sort of sisterhood, and they completely support and help each other. And it's none of this like, what are it's that catty stuff that we get fed is not really true, I've found.
Do they bring their Academy Awards?
We do bring it to
They
school.
want the girls. I mean, the original girls in
Yeah.
the original organization all have Oscars.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
really incredible.
Oh, wow.
It's like truly practice what you preach. It's about everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm going to say one funny story before I ask my last question, which is I'm a big believer, Sonali, in the way you framed it, which is to model for them. The way I did it, I didn't know how it was going to work out because I said to my kids, okay, I don't care what you do for a living. I just care that you give back. So maybe you're going to give back in your job. Maybe you're going to make money and give back with the money you make in your job. I don't care. Just you have to give back. And I would say this a lot. And then they got to an age where they would just walk out of the room and I would start to say this. And so I was like, okay, I'll stop. And then my daughter, who's a junior in college, was home over Thanksgiving and we started talking about, what do you want to do this summer? And she's trying to figure out her career path and this, that, and the other. And she looks at me and she goes, Mom, it's really annoying. And I said, what's really annoying? And she goes, I mean, you made me want to do something important for other people in this world. And that's a harder job track than just like finance. I was laughing. I was like, check.
Yeah.
Sorry. And she was laughing. She was like, okay. The last question, and it's like you knew where I was going, is how can adults model? So maybe one concrete example of how someone in this room might be able to actually model beyond just bringing them along. Like, is there some little nugget that you can think of as a piece of advice? And then the other half of that question, if there isn't a nugget there, is how can the people in this room give back in ways that maybe they've never thought about before? A doozy.
I mean, other than what I said, it's Giving Tuesday. And to me, there's multiple ways to give. If you have the ability to be able to give your funds to places that support what your heart space aligns with, please do so today. If you want to volunteer with an organization, please do that, right? Take your kids, get involved, be a mentor, volunteer for one day, or even call programs like us or other programs around and say, okay, you're offering these programs, do the girls need lunch? Pack the lunches at home and bring them over and let our girls have a wonderful lunch. It's as simple or as big as you want it to be and what your capacity is. We do a lot already. And so even when your child has a job, which is what my 15-year-old is trying to do at the moment, I really believe in the save, spend, give opportunity, right? You're teaching them about money even from a young age. But if you make any money, yes, it's important for you to save. It's important for you to be able to pay your bills and spend it. But it's also important for you to give back. And so since my kids were really little, they would have $3 that they could earn and they would have to put it in one of the jars. And if it was something that they needed to bring a canned food for school or a toy drive, they'd have to take it from their give jar to be able to do that. If I did it, it doesn't mean anything. But if they're learning how to do that, it's something very simple, but you can do that by showing them and giving them the opportunity to be able to give in various different ways. And they feel so good if they ever go to like a big Sunday event and they get to pack backpacks or anything like that. They feel good about it, like they did something for someone else. But always give them the opportunity to connect with the people that they are serving. I think that's the really important piece, because when they get an opportunity to hear from another girl or they get to see their backpack that they packed go to somebody, that's really impactful, right? They're making connections, but they're also they're learning from that opportunity. Oh, it feels good to be able to serve others, especially during this time, post-election, we're all just feeling that rage. That's a right word, just rage. But the best way to be able to combat is to be that light and to be able to serve one another and to just smile at people, and be engaging and being open. And so even little things like that, like make eye contact with someone, or smile at someone when you're walking by. Just the little things that you teach your kids are really important.
That is great. And I think that if you have a daughter or a son that comes to you and wants to start a project and it seems ambitious, hard, impossible, I would never have predicted that, like when we said, yeah, let's make a movie and get a pad machine to India, and sure, we didn't know what we were doing. That's okay. But we remained curious. We trusted other people who believed in what we were doing would lend their help. So I'd say if there's that little seed of something that your son or daughter is coming to you with and says, I want to get involved with this, or why is this? Engage and be curious and be open, and don't foreclose on anything. And then I'll talk specifically just about period and menstrual stigma, because that's where I live now. But if you, little things you can do, like have pads and tampons in your restrooms, even if you don't have somebody who is menstruating at home, because you might have a guest over and someone sees it. It's like, oh, that's there. Somebody needs it. That's an easy thing to do. We also put menstrual products in those backpacks. Also help to break the stigma. So when this book came out, Scribner at that time, now they're something else, but they were very excited and they called all the places to get us on Dr. Oz at that time, and other shows too, that were daytime talk shows. And every daytime talk show, and this is 3 years ago, every daytime talk show said, no, that's not suitable. Something that half of the population in the world go through, people did not want to talk about. And that's a big hurdle that the PAD project faces. So whenever we're asked to speak, people are still afraid to talk about periods and what happens. And so whatever you can do to shed the stigma, it's an intersectional issue too. Corporations have speakers talk about different issues, and menstruation is still on that, can someone come in and talk about that? Oh, I don't know. We're, Chase Bank or whatever it is. But yes, in fact, it's really important. First of all, it's also big business, and the amount of money that period care manufacturers make is huge, and how that plays in. So it touches on all issues. So just kind of being aware of that and helping to raise awareness and break stigma around menstruation is awesome.
And I'll just add for my 2 cents, I think asking for what you want. If you want to volunteer somewhere, if you want to work, if you already volunteer somewhere, you want to work more closely, you want to be on the board, you want to get involved, just ask. I think we're all waiting to be asked, because we're all socialized, sit in the corner and wait for someone to ask us to dance. And it's like, no, you can do it. You can do the thing, and you can make a difference. And if there's not a spot for you, then there'll be a spot for you somewhere else, or you've just learned something about the organization. You're like, well, that's not the best fit for me, but maybe there's a different organization that does it, that is a fit. So I wouldn't be shy about, I think we're very good at advocating for our kids. I think we're very, there's a lot of room for improvement, advocating for ourselves. So on that note, any questions that you all have?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask more about the international. So what kind of organizations are you pairing with internationally? Is the UN involved in one? But anyway.
Yes. So the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women is how the PAD project sort of began, because we were able to serve as delegates to the Commission on the Status of Women, which is where we first learned about this thing that is now called period poverty. Then it didn't have a name. And so UN is very aware, and you may be aware of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And goal number 5 is gender equality. There's also a goal for education. There's also a goal for women's health. There's health, clean and sanitary stuff. So there's a movement afoot by the United Nations and other organizations to make one of the Sustainable Development Goals menstrual care as a human right, which makes sense to me. I don't know if it will happen, but just to answer that question. And then in the different countries, depending on, so there are different nonprofits who are facilitating on the ground in the places where we work. So if you see the film Period End of Sentence, it's on Netflix, anybody can see it. It's 26 minutes long. And that features a pad making machine where the women make the pads from locally sourced material and sell them. And then there's a nonprofit on the ground that helps to interface with like the electricians and the engineers. In other communities, we have what's called washable pads where there are sewists and people sew the pads. So we have that in Uganda and Kenya. And that's a different kind of system. And in other places, we simply distribute pads. And now there are much bigger and better kind of factories that make pads that the women can be employed at that are better than what you see in the film. But for a kind of bird's eye view into that, I recommend seeing that film. Did that answer?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
I have a question about how you integrate issues around social media. I don't know if anyone has read the book, The Anxious Generation, by Jonathan Haidt, but I really recommend it.
Yeah. Do you have a specific question? within
Well,
your
just how
question?
you talk to the girls about social media.
Oh, in general. So I would say that, first of all, it's a very interesting book, Jonathan Haidt's book. And I think some of the recommendations, especially for people who have little kids, are phenomenal. The hard part about the recommendations in that book is you have average age of cell phone ownership, where a kid is given a phone, is 10 in this country. And a lot of the issues around devices are independent of phones. There are all of these apps exist on laptops and iPads and other devices that are not phone. And so when you look at kids from, say, 10 to 18, let's take that group, that's 9 years worth of kids each year, 4 million kids born every year. You've got 36 million kids who have devices that are theirs or access to devices at all times. And it's very hard for the parents of those 36 million to just take what I would call analog advice, either give it or take it away, because those kids are connected. They're connected because school requires it. They're connected because in many ways their social life requires it. If you talk to teenagers in particular. And so I've personally found in the work I do that that's where the waters get very muddy. And I think there's a lot of room for different kinds of advice. It doesn't have to be you have it or you don't. There are lots of pieces, lots of steps along the way where you can modulate use of all different kinds of apps, all different kinds of websites. So that's the general answer. The specific to social media answer is that the data around social media, clearly social media has very devastating consequences for a significant number of kids. Also, clearly, social media is very beneficial to a certain group of kids or to kids for a certain purpose. If you look at kids who identify as LGBTQ+, the data is very clear that they find community on social media. And sometimes these kids are living in places that are not blessed that way and that are not embracing them. And for those kids, social media can actually be life-saving. So it's complicated and it's layered. I am impressed by the way the conversation is moving around social media. I think as a society, we're all working really hard to acknowledge what the problems are. And I think companies are starting to do things. Until the last 2 or 3 months, I never would have uttered this sentence, but I think Meta is doing a very good job of trying to move the needle now. And they are implementing these teen controls where they are using AI to try to determine what a kid's age is. They ask the kid, but kids aren't really going to say. So they're using AI and they are gating the accounts of those kids, whether the kids acknowledge that they're under 16 or not, because they can no longer deny the data that shows all of the negative downstream effects. So do we have a long way to go? Yes. Do parents and schools and the social media companies need to be in partnership? Yes. Are we close to that? No, because ultimately you have a kid at home begging a parent to please let me engage with all of my peers where they are. They're not at the mall and they're not in the sandbox. They're on social media. And so this is a very slow fix that deserves, I think, a ton of open conversation. And the biggest piece of advice I can give is for any adult, trusted adult, so parent, grandparent, coach, mentor, educator, healthcare provider, to be able to sit with a kid and say, show me yours, I'll show you mine. Let me understand what happens on your social media, teach me. And that is a way for you to actually see and engage with a kid and learn about where they are in social media. And it offers 1,000 conversation starters based upon what you've seen. And I think that's sort of one nice step that people can take. But social media is not going away.
If I can add to that.
And then I want Nancy to add to that. People attention, Nancy.
To me, the important part is helping a girl understand who she is and understanding that her self-esteem and self-respect does not necessarily happen through a screen. And what is really happening on social media isn't necessarily real. If you want to have fun, dance TikToks, great. Have a great time at it. But if you see your friend posting something, that doesn't mean that's necessarily her reality, right? But helping them figure out, this is who I am, and I don't necessarily need this outside validating factor, is an important part of, I think, of a girl's development, because they need it less if you are building them up from the inside. And I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, I'm Nancy. I'm a pediatrician for over 40 years, deep into my second generation of patients who are very, I just agree with everything Cara just said about how they're interacting with the internet. But to connect it to today's talk, I want to say the kids that I worry about, because it's now a topic in every physical, it's what's going on with your screens. It's, when they're little, it's to the parents. Are your screens under control, or do you feel okay with that? And when they're older, it's directly to the kids. They don't have time to do anything, is what they say. And some of them are kids who aren't doing sports, who aren't doing after-school activities, who are coming home at 4 o'clock, not going to bed till midnight or 2. And what are you doing with that time? And when you ask, they're probably addicted to, but we won't talk about that at this point. So they can't engage in volunteer projects because they think they're too busy. And they've bamboozled their parents a little bit into thinking they are, and there's no way they're doing homework for 7 hours. It's just not happening. And they're not, even some of them are not just talking to their friends and connecting, they're playing video games. And so there's all different things that are going on that I think are dangerous, but I agree completely that we can't say you can't have this. We have to find a different way to make it more useful. And a lot of the way that I engage with the kids also is to say, well, it's not healthy that you're staying up till midnight. So let's talk about how you're not doing the pillars as the things that you need to do for your own health. You need to eat with your family. This is BS that you have to go in your room and take a tray to eat because you have too much homework. We're just not going to buy that. And I look the parents in the eye. I mean, the kids at that age, I'm seeing them alone, but I bring the parents in and I say, we've had a discussion about this. And it's just, we've got to get them talking about it and taking back control. I think the parents feel very powerless. I think a lot of you probably have kids that age, and you do have power. You're buying the equipment, you're paying for it, and take it back. I talk to them always about what's your passion. Find some way to do something that has to do with your passion. It's not doing homework. And they all say, we're doing 8 hours of homework, we're doing 10 hours. They're going to bed at 12 and 2. The parents don't even know when they're going to bed because they're staying up late with the parents. So, yeah, I think we have to just keep talking about it, and it is evolving. I do agree that some things are getting better because we're able to talk about it. They didn't even used to talk about it. So now we are talking.
And a quick shout out to the educators. I mean, I don't know how educators handle screens in the classroom because it's really like, this is just food for thought, that when kids are on screens in classrooms, which they all are, if you ask kids, just go ask them. They will tell you that there's a significant number of kids in that classroom who are shopping, watching movies, gaming, right? Gambling with real money. Gambling.
My daughter was like, kids gamble.
All day long.
Wow.
So I think there's also a
They
place.
think the teachers don't see, we do see.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And
no,
the
they
teachers are hung out to dry. And I think there's so talk about partnership and need for partnership, and schools need support there. I mean, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but there's a question out here.
Several things. One, I believe in Australia, I heard on the radio, yesterday they're eliminating devices. Do you recall the age or is it
16.
16?
16, and it's
But it's not devices.
not devices, it's social media.
Just social media? I thought it was more than that.
You know, it's social media, and it's gonna be hard for them to enforce, and it's gonna be very interesting to watch. And I think a lot of people are gonna learn a lot of lessons from it. It's gonna be fascinating.
That's
And
the
the
thing, there's
second
no
thing-
tech accountability.
That's
And I
right.
don't think our current administration is going to hold tech accountable.
No.
way. So I don't think they'll be,
Yeah, I mean, this is,
But-
so Australia will be fascinating.
Yeah.
And the second thing was, you mentioned about puberty in girls plummeting their, how they feel about themselves from 8 to 9. What is the major factor do you think is causing that?
It's not just puberty. It's social media, it's the pandemic, it's the mental health crisis. There's so many things that are on our girls that we never experienced when we were growing up. And so that's what's the reason for the plummeting. Plus their bodies are changing and
So
their emotions are
many
changing.
things. There's not
There's a lot of-
one major.
Correct.
I'm in such alignment with everything said today. I'm so happy all of you are up there. So in my work with girls, a huge thing I see is that they're excited about ending gender-based violence and sexual assault, and this they actually are like scared to go to college, and this is an issue that they feel like no one's talking about. And what I found is like parents are scared to talk about these way more hardcore things like sexual assault. And the teenage girls are like really ready to talk about it. So we're talking about stigma, right? And so specifically, Sonali, in your work with parents, like have you seen that that they want to protect them, which means don't talk about it, right? And how do we break that protection mode of fear? And rather, like it's actually a similar thing with social media. There's so much fear and protection that they're not actually engaging and talking about the girls with the things they really do care about and want to be like activists about, right? So where is that linchpin?
Well, for us, our curriculum is evidence-based, right? So we don't do anything unless the data supports it, period. End of sentence. Sorry, I just couldn't help it. But when we're talking about self-respect and self-reliance, a lot of that comes down to when we're even teaching self-defense classes, right? It doesn't start with you physically moving your body, right? And defending yourself. It really starts with your mind. And when you walk into a situation, if you see a cup that is left there, I don't care if you turned around for 2 seconds, pretend like someone peed in it or threw up in it. If you are walking into a situation, don't walk in by yourself. Look for the exit signs. Know your way out. Even if you're walking into a friend's house, because you don't know what the repercussions are. And then also, how do you actually practice defending yourself? So we offer practical tools to girls to be able to talk about how to protect themselves. To me, that there's so many different underlying components when it comes to gender-based violence, but we have to talk about it. We have to equip our girls to be able to take care of themselves, especially if they are going to college. It's to have those conversations and say, this is what could happen. And it doesn't just happen in college. It happens in high school. It happens in middle school right now. So it's interesting to be able to see that. And we also have some of our girls who are really young who are experiencing violence at home. And so it's, how am I, I'm a mandated reporter. So our facilitators know that if they hear something, or the girls share something, or they express a fear, like one of the girls, she was 8, and she literally sits in the front row and asks the hardest questions. Like, they ask hard questions at age 8 more than my 17-year-olds do in the back. And yes, one are in the front and one are in the back for a reason. But I was like, you ask really great questions. And she's like, can you tell my mom that? Because I'm always in trouble for my mouth. And I'm like, oh, me too. I used to be in trouble for my mouth, but sure, I'll tell your mom, And so I wasn't going to go chastise mom or say anything bad, but I just was like, thank you so much for bringing your daughter, because she adds so much value to our conversation and she has so many great things to offer. I never saw that kid again. I never saw her again after that day. And it always stuck with me. That's why we started offering parent programs, right? So that we're bringing the parents along with us, so that when you're hearing your child, if you're not shutting them down the second that they start talking because you disagree with them, it's let them finish what they're saying. And then once they're done, it's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. In our family, this is what we do. And this is why we do it. And it opens up the conversation. Just let her speak, because otherwise we never speak, right? We're learned to just shut it down. I shut it down for 18 years. I never spoke. Now you can't shut me up. But now, it was just like, it's something that we have to unlearn and relearn, especially as adults, to give our children spaces to speak, but also give them practical tools. I think that's really important. It's like, when you see something, this is how you respond to it, and practice at home. And, they see things all the time, and that's not for me. And then turn around and walk away. Let's practice that. Don't stand there and wait for the conversation to continue happening, because you're going to end up feeling more pressure. So just turn around and walk away. That's like a really good piece of advice, I think. But we do our best to be open and honest and really build them up so that they have those tools, practical as well as intrinsical.
And Chelsea, just to add on, there are really 2 reasons that adults don't engage in a conversation with a kid. So one is they just don't want to deal with it. They're like, la, 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 I don't want to, right? And the other is they're afraid of creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're afraid of encouraging. So when it comes to sex, for instance, that is the main reason that a lot of adults don't engage in conversations about sex. They think engaging in the conversation will facilitate experimentation, and it turns out exactly the opposite is true. When it comes to sexual assault, it's the former. It's that adults don't yet have comfort most with the topic. And so we have to get over ourselves. We have to educate ourselves. Vanessa and I always say, find your own trusted adult, right? Go talk to that person, workshop it, figure out how you're going to be in conversation with the kids in your life, try a few things, and then go try it with your kid. And if you get it wrong with the kid in your life and you totally mess up the conversation, take a do-over. I got that so wrong. That came out wrong. I take do-overs with my kids like daily, because you will not get it right the first time. And if you give yourself permission to get it wrong, you're not only coming back better the next time, but you're also giving your kid permission to get things wrong in life and come back and try again. So it's like this beautiful way of getting into awkward conversations. I know there was a question.
I just wanted to come back to the social media thing, and I'm wondering if people understand, if the doctors and the teachers understand what the impact is on the actual adolescent brain. And what I'm seeing with my kids is this feedback loop with themselves and their friends, where they're gaming or they're on socials, and they're not actually having face-to-face conversations. So as humans, I really worry, and I guess it actually extends to us as well, that we're not actually engaging with each other. And so do you have any thoughts on that? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, so, I'll just say from the pediatrician standpoint, and I think Nancy, you're probably I hope you agree. Yeah, we know it. We see it. Educators know it and see it. It's very, very clear that in a developing brain that won't be fully mature until the late 20s, and by fully mature, what that means is your consequential prefrontal cortex can make decisions as quickly as your emotional limbic system, so that it's a fair fight, right? That fair fight doesn't happen until you're in your late 20s. Up until then, it's your emotional brain that rules. When the emotional brain gets dopamine hits because you see something on social media, you're gaming and you win, you're gambling and you win, all those, it does build self-reinforcing loops in the brain. It's very clear to us as care providers that, this is at the heart of the problem. The real question is, what's the trade-off? How do you get them off a device and give them a dopamine hit somewhere else? Right. And I think that the ultimate answer is, it is not our job as their parents or trusted adults to tell them how to get a dopamine hit in their brain. It is our job to help redirect them constantly to other things, like Nancy was saying, so that they can see what their passion is, because passion is shorthand for the thing that lights up my brain. And the thing that lights up their brain is the thing they're going to go back to intrinsic, exactly what you talked about. And so that's not easy. That's not a light lift.
It's sad and it's true. So I've been teaching for almost 17 years, and students cannot read in the same way they had read. So we can't assign books with long sentences, or like Wuthering Heights, Scarlet Letter, these books. Students can't be in solitude with some, I'm generalizing, some students can, but something has happened so that I think that solitude is also a thing that has been taken away. And I sort of see this so that whereas maybe some of us are like, oh, I can't wait to read the next chapter or see what's going to happen, students don't have like practice with that, because they're always distracted by like, oh, I just got a text on my phone, what's that, or what's this, or what's the other thing. And so they actually, that kind of stillness of like thinking something through without getting immediate answers, that sort of ability is sadly shrinking. And I have a different, not that everyone's intelligent and wonderful, and I do think there are ways to get around it, but I think we don't know, the world, we don't know what is going to be with the loss of the sort of, I would ask a question, and whereas people would think and answer, people like, unless they could look it up fast, which we don't have phones in our class, but it's just a little bit of a different world, and it's a little frightening. But we're gonna do better. Yeah,
I will agree completely with what you said. And every summer when I do back to school checkups, I say, what books did you read this summer? And I was heartbroken this year that there wasn't one kid that said they read a book they loved. Not one. And that's a lot of checkups that I do. Also, I forgot to say before that it's really important we show our kids that we trust them. And what was shocking to me to hear that one of the most common calls the kids are getting on their cell phones during the day are from their parents. And we have to say, even if we don't really believe it, right? Even if we know they're going to make mistakes, we have to say, we know you're safe, you're at school. Mm-hmm. Even though we know terrible things happen at school. We have to say, you're going to make good decisions, you know what to do, call me when school's over, and we'll make our plan. Like they're calling the kids and saying, what do you want for dinner? And what's going on? And what are you wearing today? And why is that happening during the school day? This is not okay. But I think it was in that Anxious Generation that they talked about that. But,
it's bananas.
Parents have to say, we trust you. I say, why did we give you a phone? Why do you think you have a phone? It's if the plans change, you call. We're going to trust you. You're going to call us. Don't take your eyes off, because you really, you have to watch them. They have to make mistakes. That's how they learn. But act as if, like it's recovery language. Act as if you trust them. So they feel they're making good decisions. So they feel strong enough to make decisions, to do other things. I don't know. I went to a high school that said, make great mistakes. It was so empowering. I had no idea how progressive that education was back then. And yeah, East Coast too. It was really, our kids have to be allowed to make mistakes. It can't be so costly, but they feel like they're 10 years old and they're saying we're not getting into a good college if we don't get great grades. That's, no one's seeing your 10-year-old's report card. It's okay. So we really have to trust and encourage.
So
Trust ourselves too.
Jen and Steph, we're at Circle of Children preschool. So we have little ones. We do the community outreach committee, started it last year because I believe that children even as young as 3 and 4 can start learning this concept of service learning and giving. So I heard the modeling, which is, I think big what we are doing for this age. I really like the jar concept, the save, the give, the spend. And then, I think I'm going to start incorporating let's take out of the gift jar, like we did a food drive this fall. And, the kids were responsible for actually putting the food in the bin. That's a big thing. But I really liked your idea of they actually take out of their gift jar and go buy that macaroni and cheese box. And then kind of like building in that accountability more or feeling more involved. Because I feel like it's how do you get the parents to involve their children, or what's some ways that, because it's easy for the parents to just go to the grocery store and get that can of goods and just, it's like, how do you convince or just get the parents to get on board with just introducing the concept so young? Because I even felt like when I wanted to start the committee that there was a bit of, I don't want to use the word pushback, but like there was this thing, these kids are too young, and I don't believe that. My son, when he was 3 years old, back at our school in New York, he remembered filling a backpack for kids that we sent to Africa. And I kind of made that point. I was like, even if you reach 1 or 2 kids that are 3 or 4 or 5, like just modeling it for them. And so now I think it's like, it was a change, bringing it into the school and whatnot. I feel like it's been a little bit more accepted. But do you have any advice on how to kind of, I don't know, inspire parents to do more of the modeling or to incorporate? Because that's kind of been a challenge at times in different things to want to introduce.
I mean, I'll be honest. Doing things with our kids takes a lot more time than
It
ordering
does take
it
more
online,
time, right? Taking your child with you to pick out. I
It
get
takes
it.
so much
I
time
know.
and energy, and but there's so many impactful moments. I mean, my kids were doing Hope in a Suitcase since they were like 2 or 3 years old. It's like, what do you have in your room? Do you think that somebody else would need? What does that mean? And packing a little suitcase, they were so excited to pack that and give that to someone. So it's always doing that. And my kids are privileged to be able to go to private school, but they don't get the private school life because this mom really believes I provide you with food, water, shelter, a good education, and clothes on your back. Anything else that you need or that you wants are different than needs. I take care of your needs. Your wants, you take care of yourself. You can participate in the house and earn money for chores. You can get a job. You can babysit. You can do all these different things. And the things that you purchase from your spend jar is something that you end up keeping. Whether that's a little tiny ball that's from the dollar store, they will take care of that like it's the most precious thing on the planet because they had to earn that money. And it gives them a sense of responsibility from when they were really young. And I'm not the psychiatrist. This is just my parenting style, but it's also what we share with the girls. Like your parents are providing you with these things. If you need a pair of jeans or some pizza when you're going off to college or when you're in high school, get that yourself. Like you can do that. You have the ability to do things for yourself. I don't know if you realize this, but you have the ability to do that. And by giving them some agency in that, even when they're really little, it's a great learning experience. I just believe in real life consequences more than I believe in taking something away or anything else for the sort. Like, yes, your first thing to go is technology in our house, but if you happen to be that, my daughter, she was 5, she took a little tiny ball from Target, and I called the manager ahead of time, told the manager my daughter took this is what I'm coming to do. She took $1 from her give jar, and she went and returned that, said she's sorry, and she gave the $1 back. The lady's like, you're giving me the item back and you're giving me $1. I'm like, you guys have donations, take it. Like, let her have her moment. She never took anything ever again, but she also learned to give back. And so there's opportunities, but you have to have the bandwidth to be able to do that and take a few minutes out of your day. My husband and I always joke that we're exhausted because all we do is talk to our children about things. If we just let them do what they want or just said no, it would be really easy, right? It would be really easy because we would not be spent. But the emotional and mental load of just raising even one child when you're having conversations and involving them is a lot. So I acknowledge that for every parent. But it's honestly a great way to be able to engage your littles and your older ones to be who they are, and find what that is. Like, it's important to pick up the trash when you're walking, like even when they're little. You're doing something good for the earth. It's just little things, but it takes time.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I'm raising three daughters, ages 9 to 17, and it's literally getting me through. If you see me walking, listening to something, it's your voice.
My mom will want to know if you heard her episode last week.
Okay, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, let me know what you think. She would like feedback, please.
Okay. So anyways, thank you. But my question to you is, you both have incredible organizations, and I walked in a few minutes late, so I apologize if you hit on this already, but I'm just curious, ways that we can support your organizations, like what you need, if anything, and how to get involved, how to get our children involved.
Thank you for asking, because that's an important thing. Our biggest issue at Heroes Rise is capacity and funding. We're a young organization. We are 4 years old. We just celebrated our 4 years in October. And so we're entering into our 5th year. We don't have a full-time staff. I have one person that is my assistant, but I don't have employees at all. And so we are a fully 100% volunteer-based organization. So if you know people, share our story, right? Because we need funding, we need volunteers, we need mentors, we need facilitators, we always need space. We want women to be able to talk and share their stories as well. It's important that we have that. So support us, and different nonprofit organizations. Yes, you can write $100 check or $200 check or $5,000 check if you want to. But if you can just donate $10 a month or $25 a month, that's actually more helpful to a nonprofit, I think, than if you do a one-time big donation, because it's like doing your own budget at home. You can only count on the money that you know is coming in, right? So that's something that's really tangible and helpful, but also manageable to be able to do. Even $25 a month to different organizations that you care about, that's really, really helpful. Or just volunteer your time and then share your personal antidotes and stories with others. I really believe in our social capital, in being able to share stories and talking about the meaningful work that people do. And women supporting each other is really the fundamentals of who we are at Heroes Rise.
Fabulous. Thank you too. I would say go to www.thepadproject.org, because there we have all kinds of ways that you can get involved. But because this is a wonderful LA audience with students who go to schools throughout LA, an invitation for your children, sons, daughters, age 10 and 11 and up, because we do discuss things like human sex trafficking, gender-based violence. We have our annual Gender Justice Summit. This year we're going to have Anna DeVere Smith, who wrote Twilight about the riots. It's called Across Generations. So across gender and across generations with the PAD Project in partnership. And we're going to be talking about all of these issues, and students are free, and then I would encourage students to become PAD Project ambassadors, where they are part, and you can just contact me. I'll put you in touch with who to contact. But by being a PAD Project member at your school, you are then a PAD Project ambassador, and you Zoom with, you can talk about your period with someone from Uganda and someone from India. The time changes get crazy, but it's fascinating. And girls meet all over the world, and it's an official thing. So and also adults can be ambassadors. So February 8th is the October Gender Justice Summit. Love to see you there. That's at Oakwood School in North Hollywood. And then for schools like I've heard of Archer, Brentwood, Crossroads, some of them have students who are members of PAD Project, but come join us, and we do inter-school events. Invite your school to talk about menstruation and menstrual equity and reproductive rights, which is menstrual equity is very tied into reproductive rights, and the lack of reproductive rights around the country is a clear indicator of our lack of understanding about the menstrual cycle. Obviously, 4 weeks is not enough, or 5 weeks is not enough time. In some states, you all know what I'm talking about. But anyway, all of these things intersect. So yes, February 8th, thepadproject.org, ambassadors. Thank you, everyone.
And there are links to donate
Yeah.
to both the organizations and the invitation.
Oh my God, and thank you so much. This is like,
We do have books right in here at the register if you want to see the book and have you sign
I know.
I could have gone there so many times, but I'm like, I still want to crazy difference. So that's part of
You know, on the internet, anything like sexual. Also the health
So they can claim that they won the only see, I'm very they can't say they're accounting more teachers because they're producing, the students were actually but he doesn't always. You want to break the book? Yes, I do. Yeah, the one on the.